As a caveat in beginning this, I taught Megillat Esther over a semester for 15 weeks of an hour and a half per month a week. So trying to condense that in less than an hour today is going to be a bit difficult. We will not even make any such attempt, but we will try to touch on a few major issues, and we will begin accordingly. Studying Megillat Esther as adults is a bit problematic for two major reasons. The first is that embedded in our heads is what we learned in kindergarten. And the way you read something and learn something the first time is the way it kind of like sticks with you for the rest of your life. And what makes it particularly problematic is that it's all of 10 chapters, and you're sitting there and you're waiting for the next thing to come along, and you already know what the end is. So what makes it particularly hard for us is that A, we thought of it as children do, and we continue to think of it as kindergartners. And B, it's a awfully tense drama, but you already know the end. Now, I don't know about you, but when I used to read Agatha Christie, after a while I would get too tired of it, and I'd go to the end to find out really what happened and what was the end of the mystery. If the novel, however, was very, very good, even if I knew the end, it was worth reading all over again. That is, if I was not a baby and reading it like a child. And that's what you need to do when you approach the Megillat Esther. You need to approach it as an adult. And you need to approach it because the author who's writing this, who sends it to Chazal and tells them, Kitvuni ledorot, please inscribe me for all generations, is writing a story in a style that is defying all genres of the Tanakh. It is unique amongst all the 24 books of the Tanakh. There is none like it, for two reasons. There isn't the name of Hashem in it, not even once. And there are details that we do not get anywhere else. And therefore, some say that this is written in the style of Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. It is written in Persian manner. It provides details of what the palace looked like and what people are wearing and all of the colors and all of the details that otherwise, who needs to know this? And so clearly we have here, if you like, an alien influence, and that's the way modern critics like to look at this. What they're forgetting is that the Megillah is written in code. And Chazal already knew this, because they told you, how do I know that Esther is min ha-Torah? Ki katuv haster astir et panai. Esther is actually already from the Torah itself, for the Rabbanu Shalom says there will come a day when I will hide my face. And Esther, I will hide, is spelled exactly like Esther, without a yud, to indicate, in fact, that there is a study in allusion. Now, I'll explain a little bit for those who don't understand what an allusion is, and for those that do, I beg your forgiveness. The reader of Esther, it's presumed, knows the Tanakh and will pick up the clues that are being thrown all over the place for you to pick up the hidden message. Because the writer that's writing this is being looked over by the censors of the kingdom of Persia and Media. The writer cannot tell the whole story explicitly. She needs to write it out in a manner for you to be able to pick up the clues and understand the ironies and understand the tragedy under what looks like a happy story. It begins right away with a code that all of us know, Vayhi. And Chazal tell us that whenever a story begins with the word Vayhi, this is not a happy story, this is a tragedy. It's a sad story, because otherwise you would say V'haya, and it was. Vayhi is the Hebrew equivalent to oivei. And you're supposed to hear the Megillah because you're supposed to pick up the tones. And you're supposed to pick up the verbal cues. And you're supposed to listen to the trup, which tells you when things are not necessarily the way they seem. So it'll look like happy-go-lucky on the outside, but the music underneath it is terribly sad, telling you that it is not happy at all. And when it begins immediately with a variety of clues by using verbosity that otherwise would not be needed. And for that, you have your sheets in front of you. For those of you didn't get it, you should be able to find these in the back. We begin by Vihi bimei Achashverosh, hu Achashverosh, hamolech mehodu ve'ad kush. Flip it around, you'll see both sides. No more sheets? Extra sheets are here. Vakasha. There you are. There we go. Any decent editor would tell you that you could take that particular statement and cut it down very simply. B'yimei Achashverosh hamelech mehodu me'ad kush. Enough said. But if you notice carefully, we're repeating his names not once but twice. Vayhi b'yimei Achashverosh. And how many Achashveroshes do you know? Hu Achashverosh hamolech, who is ruling, not hamelech. Hamolech mehodu ve'ad kush. Just in case you confused him with the other Achashverosh. And by doing this, it's told you something incredible. It told you that Achashverosh was not a king, and he was not born to the royal family. He was at best a member of the artillery of the king, but had won his power through a series of exploits, military exploits, in which the kingdom is expanded from Hodu, from India, all the way to Ethiopia, in fact, grasping the entire Mesopotamian Fertile Crescent. And that's how he rose to power. But this was not a simple thing because it was Vayhi, because this power grab and this land grab came with massacres and brutality, which are untold, but which are left for you to surmise because you understand what this really means. Bayamim hahem, in those days, keshevet hamelech Achashverosh al kiseh malchuto, and a tiny little letter, kaf instead of bet. It is not when he sat on his throne, but keshevet, when he was almost on his throne. And when was it? Bishanat shalosh limolcho, in the 3rd year of his reign. Wait a minute. I thought you said that when he sat on his throne, and now it turns out that it's 3 years later. It takes 3 years before he feels comfortable enough to do what? To celebrate his inauguration. What would have happened in between is a bloodbath. What happened between then and now is left for your imagination until he feels comfortable enough to do what? La'asot mishteh. Now, mishteh is, of course, what Purim is all about. We're all going to be having these parties that are primarily focused around drinking. I think they call them cocktail parties in America. And I believe that it was Jackie Mason that says Jews, when they celebrate, they eat, but Goyim, they drink. 10 mishteh, 10 times there will be 10 parties in this kingdom in which critical decisions will be made. And look at the irony. It is when people are reveling, when they are drunk as skunks, that critical decisions are being made about life and death, or so it seems. Or so it seems. And what does he then do? He makes this grand party, lechol sarav ve'avadav. And how long will the party go on? 180 days. So for a half a year, there is no government. For a half a year, all the offices are closed. The army is on furlough. For 180 days, all they do is drink. I mean, this is madness. And besides that, what do we care? What are we being told here? What have I got to do with his mishigassen, with his drunkenness? Harav Avraham Rivlin, who was the mashgiach of Kerem Beyavne, wrote a remarkable book, and he says as follows: do you notice that when somebody needs to celebrate that much, when he now needs to make this party for the nobility as well as the commoners, for men and women, for everybody, and to do what? Leharot osher gdulato, to show his wealth, to show what he's brought in, the loot, and to demonstrate it. This does not indicate the strength of a new king. This shows actually his weakness. We know here that people who really have wealth don't need to flaunt it. But he's not merely a commoner and a nouveau riche, new to the throne. He is somebody who is now out to buy his support. So what he's doing is he's showing the wealth and the ability to whom he can give this, what it is that he has to give all these people, to understand what power he has and how he can bribe them and buy their support. But in order to do this, he needs to do two major things. He has moved the capital from the previous capital of the Babylonian kingdom, from Bavel to Shushan. This is no mere small detail. You need to understand that this entire area had been previously ruled by the Assyrians. The Assyrians controlled the entire area. They were brought down by a nation that they had previously ruled over and rebelled, and that became the Babylonian kingdom, and they took over. Now we have a merger of Persia and Media, who swallow the Babylonian kingdom. So you've got one coup over another coup over another coup. Open up your newspapers and understand what's really going on. We're talking about what? Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, Iran, and simply study what has happened in that area in the last 50 years. And the number of deaths from one power rising over another power, swallowing another power, and what has been the cost of it in human lives. What has been the cost to this common person as one kingdom swallows another? That's what your background needs to be understood. But the writer of this presumes that you know this, because if you learned Melachim Bet, if you learned Yirmiyahu, this is all something that you would immediately pick up the cues about. You understand? And what happens there? What happens in all of this? You suddenly get a very small detail, which I didn't include in your sheet, but I should have. In describing the party, we're being told, בהראותו את עושר כבוד מלכותו ואת יקר תפארת גדולתו ימים רבים 80 ומעט יום. And when he finished this party of 180 days that went migadol ve'at katan, he made a smaller party for the sarim, for the nobility of the various nations, for their ambassadors and their representatives, Shivat Yamim. And there you're told a sentence that comes along in the 6th verse in the 1st chapter, which has no subject and no predicate. Hu כרפס ותכלת, אחוז בחבלי בוץ וארגמן, על גלילי כסף וחמודי שש, מיטות זהב וכסף על רצפת בהת ושש ודר וסוחרת. Okay. והשקות, and everybody's being drunk and being given drink, בכלי זהב, with utensils of gold, and the same one that could give me 4 different words for different colors and shapes of marble. Bahat, Vishesh, Dar, Vesocharet, couldn't come up with words for vessels. Instead, he says, V'chelim mikelim shonim, and vessels of various vessels. Suddenly he lost his vocabulary. The thesaurus fell out of the bookcase, couldn't find it, and couldn't come up with words. Well, we just read Truma and Tetzaveh. I want you to understand what was really happening here. And you, of course, notice that they're giving you a sledgehammer over your head to understand that this is very important, because Chul is written with a capital Chet. Now, what should you know about Chul? Typically, the word chol means a hole. And so they identify chul as lace or lacework that has little holes in it. And trying to describe the fabrics that are all over the place in all the colors. But if you know your Tanakh, you know who Chul is. Chul is the man that stood up to those who went and made the Egel HaZahav and lost his life in the process. So I'm talking about idolatry. But I'm doing more than idolatry. A number of years ago, we visited Prague. Some of you may have gone to Prague. And in Prague, there is the Maharal Shul. Not far from there, there is a shul called the Meisel Shul. That was named for not the rabbi, but a rich man named Meisels who built the shul. The Meisel Shul remained intact because the Nazis had decided that they would use that as a home for a future museum of Judaica, the museum of a vanquished race. The entire building is filled with menorahs, manuscripts, besamim boxes, Kiddush cups, you name it. Judaica. And it was meant for everybody to come and see, this was a people that once was, and they were going to collect it there. Among the people that are coming to Achashverosh's inaugural party are Jews. And what do they see that's finally being exhibited? Chul, karpas, utchelet, achuz bechavlei butz ve'ergaman. All of the loot that Nebuchadnezzar took from Beit HaMikdash, they finally figured out that 70 years have come and gone, and it's okay now to display the loot of a vanquished race. And Jews are coming there to drink mikelim shonim, from a variety of utensils that previously had been used for what? In the beautiful description that we have in the few places of what Avodat Beit HaMikdash was like, we are told that Pirchei Kehuna, the young Kohanim, would stand in a line, and from the Beit HaMashchita, where they used to slaughter the sheep, they would collect the blood, and the blood was collected in small gold, long-handled utensils, and this was passed like a relay from hand to hand, from kolben to kolben, until it came to the Mizbeach, where it was poured. Now, it created a beautiful sight from a distance because it looked like a flow of gold. And the Pirchei Kehuna used to wear red tunics so that when it splattered on them, you would not see it. But instead of blood in those utensils, we now have wine. We have wine. Do you understand the irony of it? And who's drinking? Who would touch that? Only Kohanim who were Tehorim could touch those things. And now we've got not only arelim, but Jews who have integrated and who have lost all memory, who've become assimilated into this society, and they don't even understand that they're celebrating. It reminds me of when we came here, we found out that there are they consider themselves good Jews, who think it's perfectly harmless to put on a costume on Halloween and walk around trick or treat, not recognizing that Halloween was the day in which there were new Jewish massacres and pogroms throughout Europe. So short was the memory that they've become so assimilated that they too are doing this, and this is what's happening here. The Jews too came to celebrate. The Jews too came. And right after you're being told this, right? V'hashtiya kadat ein ones. And everybody's drinking, and no one forces you to drink. Now, why would you say nobody forces you to drink? And everyone can do whatever he wishes, because the king so commanded that his waiters, his servants, should do what every human being wants. The master politician. This one wants, I want his support, I'll make him a promise. This one I want his support, I'll make him the opposite promise. Both of those can't be. But he knew how to do this. He is, in fact, bribing and subtly threatening so that he wins their support. And this is the way he consolidates his rule. A commoner that got to the throne. But how did he get to the throne? To do so, he needed to legitimize his reign, so he made a convenient marriage with a woman named Vashti, who is the granddaughter of Nebuchadnezzar. Comes the Malbim and tells you, when you read the Megillah, please pay attention. When there is a title before a name, when there's a title after a name, or when there is a name without a title. If there is Achashverosh without a title, it means he doesn't have one yet. If I have it after the name, it means he's first the man and then the king. If I put his name first, his title first and then the name, HaMelech Achashverosh, he's now functioning in a royal official capacity. Ditto for Esther. Ditto for Vashti. We will do all of that at the same time. And so what does he do? On the seventh day, Ketov lev hamelech bayayin. He's now good and drunk and inebriated, or so it seems. Or so it seems. He sends Shivat HaSarisim. Now, I don't know what your translations make with the word Sarisim. But literally a Saris is a eunuch. He sends 7 eunuchs to the harem to bring Vashti, Beketer Malchut, with her royal crown. Now, there's a simple rule of logic. It's called Mehahen Tavin et Halav. From what I tell you, you can determine what I did not tell you. He did not say for her to come down in royal garb. He told us to bring her down in her royal crown. To do what? To show everyone, leharot ha'amim ve'hasarim et yofia ki tovat marehi. Chazal tell us that the Persians and the Arabs are known for their great emphasis on modesty. The Arabs only cover the women's faces, beralot. But the Persians have their women completely covered with a chador to this day. And yet, what are we being told to do with her? To show her off. She was to be brought down when they're all good and drunk on the 7th day, stark naked. To do what? To take the queen and turn her into a thing in front of all of these princes, and thereby indicate that no longer does he need her for the throne. Now she needs him. And he's now on the throne on his own. All of this was a scheme to be able to take a limited monarchy and turn it into an absolute monarchy. To take a former general and turn him into a complete despot, which is what he did. This was not something done at the spur of the moment. Don't kid yourself, though it's meant to be written this way. It's meant to be done in a way that, if she gives in, then all's well. But if she doesn't, then we have a ruse that has been arranged, but will be well orchestrated, where Memucan will rise up and suddenly turn this into a national security crisis. That if Vashti did not come down, why, all women will rebel against their husbands, and there will be chaos in the kingdom of 127 provinces. We must put an end to this and make an example of her. So what was done with Vashti? What was done with Vashti? Not a word. Not a word. All you're told is that later on, when the king becomes sober again, he remembered Vashti. Oh, and he longed for her. And what are we going to do now? We need to find a replacement. How convenient. How convenient. You see, there are some who argue that Vashti was now put as merely one concubine amongst many in the harem. But if that's the case, he would not have needed to worry about getting a new queen. What we do find out is something very interesting. Of the 7 princes that suggested that Vashti be made an example of and that we need to get rid of her, we will never hear from them again. It's how Achashverosh can have others assume the responsibility for what he himself had orchestrated, but he, being the Teflon king, never ever is responsible for anything that's done, because after all, every decision that he ever made was made when he was drunk. And therefore, you couldn't possibly have taken it seriously. And therefore, what do we do with those people who... We get rid of them as well. We hush it up, and we don't make sure that we call in CNN or anybody else to be able to interview. We don't have to be able to do anything about this. It's all quiet. And yet a very interesting thing happens at the time. Letters are sent out to 127 Medinot. To do what? That every man should be ruler in his own household and should speak in his own language. Have you ever heard such an absurd message? Was that perhaps also Yad Hashem? That now those letters that went out to everyone would say, what kind of a tweet is this? Can't take it seriously. Can't take it seriously, so that when letters will come out later on, perhaps people will be hesitant to not take them that seriously and wait to get an official, more clear and explicit message about what it is that they're supposed to do. I told you that there are 10 mishtaot, and the word mishteh repeats itself again and again and again, as does yain. But there's another word that appears over and over again as an incredible mockery. And that's the words dat vadin, 18 times in the Megillat Esther. Dat vadin. Now, in modern Hebrew, the word dat means religion. Din, of course, is law. We know that. Dat vadin seems to be a Greek word, possibly coming from the word data, but implies, in fact, some kind of a statute or a norm. And when the king makes his decisions about what to do, he consults with Yodei Dat Vadin, as well as Yodei Ha'itim, those who know the times. In other words, your astrologers. But it's not merely the astrologers. It's not merely a case of whether somebody's going to be reading their horoscope. To understand the times means how will things sell down on Main Street? Will this work out in Peoria? How do I deal with this in terms of the politics, or will this create a backlash? Those are the Yodei Ha'itim and Yodei Dat Vadin. And the mockery of it is that it seems that the king never does anything unless it is followed by asking his attorney general and his lawyers if this is all constitutional, when in fact there's really nothing that's constitutional and nothing that's legal. Everything that's being done seems to be done by chance, because you'll remember that standing next to law and order is the pool, and the pool are the throwing of the dice and the lots. There seems to be a belief in coincidence, circumstance, fate that runs the world. And in fact, if fate runs the world, then it is not our responsibility. It is being run by some predetermined plan. But there is a predetermined hand that's guiding here. Only it is invisible, it is silent. In Perek Bet, we're told as follows: Achar hadvarim ha'ele, Chamat HaMelech Achashverosh Shachacha, it calmed down and abated. And when he remembered Vashti, and do you notice that Vashti is no longer Hamalka? No longer. Ve'et asher nigzar halea, and unless you know Ivrit, you don't understand really what happened to her. But what is a gzera is usually treated as a decree, but it comes from the word ligzor. And that's what Chazal say, it was the guillotine. And what does he do? Vayafked hamelech pekidim bechol medinot malchuto. They send out and appoint officers throughout the kingdom, and they gather kol na'ara betulat tovat mare el shushan habira, and they gather every virgin, good-looking virgin, from out the kingdom, and she's brought to the harem. Now, the reader who reads this says, wait a minute, I think I heard this before. Vayafked hamelech pekidim. You have heard these words before if you read the story of Yosef. Yosef told the king, Paro, if you remember, that there will be a famine of 7 years, preceded by 7 years of plenty. Vayafked hamelech pekidim, and the king appointed officers. And what did they do? They gathered the grain from across the kingdom and put them not in one, but in two major storehouses. What does Achashverosh do? He gathers women and puts them not in one, but in two major harems, because one was not enough. And what do? They gather all of these girls. It is at this point in Perek Bet that everybody in the crowd is told to say something out loud. And it interrupts your entire story. Ish Yehudi haya b'Shushan habira, u'shmo Mordechai ben Yair ben Shimi ben Kish ish Yemini. Remember? We all read it out loud. We all say it out loud. And then what does it say bad? Now there's something very strange about here. Im hu Yehudi hu lo Yemini. Im hu Yemuni hu lo Yehudi. You see, Ish Yemini means that he comes from the tribe of Binyamin. And if he's a Yehudi, he would be coming from the tribe of Yehuda. However, Yehuda and Binyamin are the only remnants that we have left of 12 tribes, and that became Judea. And the intelligentsia, the Kohanim, the royal household of Yehoiachin, were taken into exile 12 years prior to Churban Bayit Rishon. It is at this point that your Bal Koreh turns into a tone of Eicha. Asher hogla mi Yerushalayim, im hagola asher hogleta, Im Yechonia melech Yehuda asher hegla Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel. Now you know that that's impossible because he couldn't have been taken at that time. Had he been taken at that time and the time that Achashverosh is there, he would have been, gosh knows how old at this point. It doesn't have to say that. You see, mi hogla, who was taken to captivity? Who was taken to exile? Ish Yehudi. Ish means the important people. They came to Shushan Abirah, but his name is Mordechai. And you need to understand that Mordechai is Marduk, and it is a Babylonian god. Their names are no longer Jewish names. But he comes from the family of Yael, Shimi, Kish. We skip a couple of generations and we're going back to the names of whom? The ancestors of Shaul HaMelech. He comes from the family of Shaul HaMelech, who was, of course, taken over later on in his reign, was taken over by the reign of David. For what? For having failed to kill Agag. You just read that. He was supposed to wipe out Amalek, but he didn't. And therefore, generations later, this comes to haunt us. That moment of weakness, of perhaps compassion, comes back to haunt us generations later. So you're reading this way, and not once, not twice, but not 3 times, but 4 times over your head, the word galut, galut, galut. This is a golosid. A Jew amongst the other Jews have now become exiled diaspora Jews who have assimilated into the society, who've almost given up on ever going back to Eretz Yisrael. Vahi omen et Hadassah. And he was the apotropos. He was the man who took care of Hadassah. He, Esther, yeah, because they have Jewish names inside, but outside they have Goyish names. And Esther is Ishtar, the goddess of love in the mythology of the Babylonians. Bat Dodo. Ki ein la av va'em. She has no father and mother. This orphan girl was being raised by Mordechai. V'hane'ara tovat yefat toar v'tovat mar'eh. We didn't hear that double language except for Rachel and Yosef. Ubemot avi ve'ima, and when her mother and father died, lekacha Mordechai lo lebat. You're being redundant. You just told me, Ha'i omen et Hadassah ki ein la av va'em. I don't need the second half, right? Or give me the second half and don't tell me the first half. I don't need that. And therefore Chazal say that she was not, he had raised her, but was also betrothed to her. She was part of his household and was designated to become his wife. Now this is crucial for you to understand. This is the man who has safeguarded her, who's taken care of her, and she's supposed to marry him. They are betrothed. Lehalocha, if you are betrothed, your status, even if the marriage has not been consummated, and you are still a virgin, your status is as an Eshet Ish, which means that if she sleeps with another man, she is forbidden to him as well as to her husband or her betrothed. She can never go back. He hides her. He tries to secure her. But what happens? Vatilakach Esther. Esther is taken. And the passive voice tells you this is not something she wanted. I know the way we did it in kindergarten made it seem like you were winning the Miss America pageant, and you were happy for that. Don't you understand? This is the most horrific day of her life. The woman is essentially being abducted and will be raped. And she's taken there, Eliad Hegai Shomer Hanashim. And then not once, But twice in the same chapter, you will be told, Lo higida Esther et ama ve'et moladeta. Esther did not tell who her people are, what nation she comes from. And moledet does not mean birthplace, it means your clan, the family from which you come from. Ki Mordechai tziva alea asher lo tagid. Because Mordechai commanded her not to tell. And after she is chosen by Achashverosh and is taken against her will, and even after she finds favor in his eyes, and he makes her queen, Ein Esther magedet moladeta ve'et aman. Your tense is a continuous presence. She still does not tell where she comes from. The only difference is moladeta, who's your family, and who is your nation. Kasher tziva alea Mordechai ve'et ma'amar Mordechai Esther osa kasher hayta be'omna mito. She remains loyal to him. She remains faithful to him. She remains obedient and doesn't tell. Why not? Why not? If today she finds favor and tomorrow she does not, she may not only lose her head, but if they know where she comes from, she's endangered, her family, and her people. Such is the fickle reign of Achashverosh. And from that you can surmise what would have happened not only to Vashti, but to all those around her. What happens in despotic countries when you defy a king, that it is not only you, but it is your family, it is your neighborhood, it is your people that are massacred. This is the case in North Korea, it's the case in Iran, it's the case all over the world. So Esther is in fact trapped in this palace, silent. Others said, surely he would have wanted to marry somebody from a noble family. And by not telling him, perhaps he would see her as a mere commoner, perhaps even an illegitimate girl who has no parents, who's been a foundling, and therefore perhaps would reject her and throw her out. That would have been perhaps the first occasion. But on the second occasion, when he's already made her queen, she still remains persistent in that. That does not change at all. Because this is also a shame. It is a source of shame. And no one is proud about the fact that the queen is our sister. Because what she is, she's sleeping with the shagets. She is there against her will and is lost to her people. And this is certainly not something that you'd want to be proud of or mention. So there's also a source of shame, some say, and therefore to spare her family and her people the shame of it, not a word. Now, having found his replacement for Vashti, you think that the story would be over, right? How long did it take from the time that Vashti is killed till Esther is appointed? How long does it have? How many years? Esther was taken, ותלקח אסתר אל המלך אחשוורוש אל בית מלכותו בחודש העשירי, in the 10th month. And in case you didn't get it, hu chodesh tevet. Now, if I know that it's tevet, I don't need to be told that it's a chodesh ha'asiri. But if I say it's the 10th, and it's the month of tevet, what's the 10th day of Teves? It is a fast day. It's the day in which the Babylonians breached the wall. And there's a breaching of the wall here. Bishnat sheva lemalchuto, in the 7th year of his reign. And it is then that she's taken to the king. 4 years in which there is a different girl every night in his bed. 365 days a year, times 4. How many girls are already in the palace. And no sooner does he appoint her queen, ubihikabetz betulot shenit. He continued to gather young maidens. They've got the queen. And they continue day in and day out to bring new girls into the palace. And when Mordechai sees that that's what's happening, Mordechai Yoshev Bishar HaMelech. Mordechai comes to the gates of the palace, hoping what? Why are they gathering more girls? Is she losing her head? Is she going to kill her now? Or maybe he's going to reject her. Maybe she'll be thrown out. We know the end of the story, but I want you to put yourself in the mindset of what these people were living through. They don't know that there's going to be a happy ending, or is that happy ending there at all? Well, not for Esther. Not for Esther at all. Now, you know the rest of the story. You know that later on there will be a plot to kill the king. Bigtanen. Right. And you will know that Mordechai, who is so concerned for Esther and walks in front of the gates day in and day out to get a word about what it is that's happening there, finds out about the plot and lets Esther know so that she can become the heroine that saves Achashverosh's life. Now, Esther, however, true to herself, doesn't claim the knowledge by herself, says that word came to her, B'Shem Mordechai. She says it in the name of Mordechai, hoping that maybe some good will come from it. But it's packed away, it's all finished. Why was there a plot? Because he killed Vashti, because this kingdom is not as secure as it seems to be. Because there's those who are trying to foment rebellion, those that are plotting assassination day in and day out. And as a result, Achashverosh does not feel secure, and from not feeling secure, he's now become quite paranoid. And from now on in, he will lock himself away, having his back always to the wall so that nobody can stick a knife into it, and no one can come to see him unless he is summoned directly. But who's running the kingdom? Who's running the kingdom? Who's advising the king? You're told something incredible. Ne'arim, a bunch of lads. Sarisim, collection of eunuchs. And a man named Haman, who is none other than Memuchan, a man who rose to power because he so conveniently arranged to get rid of Vashti. This Haman is also ambitious. And his purpose is not merely to be viceroy and be second in command. His purpose is, in fact, to do nothing more than to actually replace the king. But there is a man who will not bow to him, who will not submit to him. His name is Mordechai. Now, it's very curious. Remember that when Mordechai refuses to bow, he's endangering not only himself, he's endangering his people. Or is he? Is Mordechai reached a point where it's about time to stop going along and getting along? It's about time for somebody just to stand up and hopefully expose. Does he know that the Ribono Shel Olam is going to turn things around for him? No. He doesn't. But he takes an incredible risk. A horrible risk. And of course, you all know about the plot. Yeshno am echad, there is one nation, asher datehem shonot, right? Their religion, their rules, their norms are different from all of the others. Velo shaveh lamelech, and it's not worthwhile keeping them around. Now, he initially offers the king money as a price for genocide, because the Jews' property, their land, their homes, their utensils, whatever it is, will become his. So there is money to be made from it. And Achashverosh, not to seem crass, says, nah, hakesef natun lecha, you can have the money, I don't need it, you can do with them whatever you like. Some see Achashverosh as a fool, as a bumbling fool, and that's the way he's usually described. He's no one's fool. He is a Teflon king who is just as evil as the rest. But your author can't say this because the censors are reading the Megillah that's being sent. So she presumes to make it seem like the king is being misled, when in fact he's going along with it all. And when Haman will ultimately be exposed, it's not only Haman that will be exposed, it's also Achashverosh that will be exposed. The critical moment, the number one moment, if you like, the climax of the story, is in your 4th chapter. When the plot becomes known, Esther, of course, demands that, at first she's afraid to do anything, saying everybody knows that anybody who goes to the king, he will automatically be killed unless he's summoned, and unless the king sends out his scepter and receives her at that moment. And Mordechai tells her, this is in chapter 4, Vayomer Mordechai lahashiv el Esther. And by the way, all of these messages are going through a messenger from the harem, one of the eunuchs. Al tedami benafshech limalet beit hamelech mikol haYehudim. Don't imagine for a moment that you'll be the only one that survives in the palace of all of the Jews. Ki macharesh tacharishi ba'et hazot. Because if you remain silent in this particular moment, and then quite securely he says, Revach v'hatzala ya'amod laYehudim mimakom acher. Hashem's name is not mentioned, but it's alluded. We call him Hamakom. Revach v'hatzala, salvation and rescue will come. Mimakom acher, from another place. Ve'at ubeit avich tovedu. And you and your father's household will be eradicated. Chazal tell us that Esther was none other than the Gilgul of Shaul HaMelech. She had come to redeem and save his soul, and it was up to her to finish the job that Shaul had not done. And therefore, mi yodea im le'et kazot tigat lamalchut. Who knows if for this reason you became queen? To which she sends them to fast for 3 days and 3 nights. And I too will fast, and that is how I will come to the king. And we're told, Vayhi bayom hashlishi. And if you know the Tanakh, this should ring bells to you. Vayhi bayom hashlishi vayisa Avraham et einav vayar et hamakom merachok, and he saw the place from afar as he was going up to the Akedah. It was on the 3rd day. Vayhi bayom hashlishi vayu kolot uvrakim, and it was on the 3rd day, and there was thunder and lightning, and the voice came from heaven that said, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Har Sinai. This is the critical, dramatic moment. Vayhi bayom hashlishi, vatilbash Esther Malchut. And Esther dressed herself in royalty. Rashi says that his interest is only in the pshat. And he says, and by the way of the pshat, you should say the words bigdei malchut. She dressed herself in royal clothing, but it doesn't say clothing. She dressed herself in malchus. She dressed herself in kingship. This feeble little girl who was taken against her will, who tries as best as she could not to find favor. This girl suddenly knows how to take attitude and wear it. Vatilbash Esther Malchut. But the Zohar says, Shchina levashta. The Shchina dressed itself in her. She became the instrument of God. And she stood there. Vatamod bechatzar beit hamelech hapnimit. And she stood in the inner courtyard. In the Middle East, homes were built in a closed square shape, in which there's entrance from the outside, and in the middle there is an open courtyard, allowing air to flow in the hot climate, but also allowing those that are in the back that has no entrance to exit to the street, namely the harem, to be able to come to the fore part, which is where the king is sitting. So Esther is standing right now in the inner courtyard, Nochach Beit HaMelech, facing the house of the king. Vehamelech Yoshev al Kiseh Malchuto, and the king is sitting on the royal throne. Bebeit HaMalchut, in the royal palace. Nochach Betach Habayit, opposite the opening of the house. Awful lot of details that could have been cut down to less than one phrase. But in fact, when Esther is standing there, she's not merely facing the king over there. She's facing the king up there. And the king, who's not mentioned in the entire Megillah, is sitting on his throne, even when it seems that he's not. And he's running the show. And at that point, there is a triangular shape between Esther, the Rebbeinu Shalom, and Achashverosh, as she, acting in God's stead, approaches the king. My children came on Shabbos and said that they heard that some Reform female rabbi had declared that Vashti is the first of the Me Too movement. It's actually old hat. In an anthology by Colton in the 70s, it was argued that the modern heroine is Vashti, who refuses to come down and become an object, and defies the king even as she loses her head. The Jewish approach is that that type of narcissistic heroism has no place. Not then, not now, because this is not about me. This is about what's good for my people. There is a very famous idiom in Ivrit. It's called Al tieh tzodek tieh chacham. Don't be right, be wise, be smart. What good would a dead Esther do us? An Esther, however, who will sacrifice herself, who can say, Kasher avadati, avadati, if I'm lost, then I'm lost. If I'm about to approach him and seduce him. and lose any chance of ever going back to Mordechai, any chance of any personal happiness. And if in this so doing I lose my soul because what I've done is forbidden by the Torah. If it's Gilui Arayot, but I'm doing it for the sake of my people, then I'm willing to lose not only my life, I'm willing to lose my soul. And that's true heroism. That's true heroism. To be Vashti, who will not be made into a commoner, might sound very good if you want to mount the barricades, but it would accomplish nothing. And so what does Esther do? Vayomer la HaMelech, Malach Esther HaMalka, what is it that you want, Esther? Uma bakashatech. And what is your request? Vatomer Esther. Not Esther HaMalka. Not HaMalka Esther. But she knows how to get to this man. And it's not through his head. And it's not through his heart. It's under his belt. So she acts the woman. And she knows what is his buttons that would work. Jealousy. This is a man who's run by lust and by ambition. And so what does she do? She dares to approach him. Sheilati uvakashati. And then doesn't say a word. She risks her life to invite him to drink with her and Haman. That's what she did it for. But that will keep him awake at night, wondering what's going on. This is the same woman that actually saved his life from the last assassination attempt. This is the woman who seems to have secrets and doesn't tell it to him. She manages to intrigue him, so she plays the game. And she plays the temptress because that's the only game that will win. And of course, in Perek Vav, Vatan Esther HaMalka. Now this is, of course, when they come for the second time. Imatzati chem beinei HaMelech v'imal HaMelech tov. Tinaten li nafshi b'sheilati. Now she didn't speak like the seductive woman, but rather like the queen. What I beg for, what I demand is I want my soul and my nation. Ki nimkarnu ani ve'ami, for I and my people have been sold. Lehashmid, leharog, uleabed. Ve'ilu le'avadim u'leshfachot nimkarnu, had we only been sold as slaves, I would not have bothered you. Hecherashti, I would have remained silent. Do you remember when he said, Hacharesh tacharishi? I would have been silent. Ke'ein hatzar shoveh benezek hamelech. The last thing I would want to do is cause you any damage. At which point the melech asks her, Mihu zeh ve'ezehu? Who is it? Where is he? And now it's not Esther HaMalka. Vatomer Esther, and there's a big pause. She's looking at the king, and her finger is going like that. And then she turns it to Haman. Ish tsar ve'oyev. Haman haraze. And what is his reaction? He runs out. He runs out because his face must have turned from red to white. He'd been caught. He'd been caught, and the king was naked, and she knew it, and he knew it. But he's saved by what? When he returns, Haman falls on Esther's lounge, and the king says what? Hagam lichbosh et hamalka imi babait. Did you come to also capture the queen while I'm still here in the house? Also capture the queen means also to capture the throne. And finally, he understands that Haman has been the one that's actually trying to depose him. But meanwhile, of course, the day was saved. And who's left in the palace? Esther remains the prisoner. The reviled woman married to a Shegitz, who's lost to her people and any personal happiness, who's given up her life and her soul for her people. So she writes, Kitvuni ledorot, inscribe me for all future generations. And then the hand of God will continue to act. You see, Arav Rivlin puts it very well. We're told, Zechor et asher asam lecha Amalek asher korcho baderech. Amalek stands for the notion that everything is mikre, happenstance, coincidence, mikre. But in the words mikre, you have the words Hashem rakam, God knitted this, or mehashem, rak mehashem. It's all come from God. It will be her descendant, Daryavesh, who will rebuild Beit HaMikdash. Thank you very, very much.